Welcome back, everyone, to the Men on a Mission podcast. I'm your host, Brad Richard, and shortly we will be starting our next episode. We will be providing you tools, resources, and information that you can use to make your life just a little bit better. But before we do that, let's honor our country, and then we'll begin the podcast. Welcome back to the Men on a Mission podcast. I'm your host, Brad Richard, and today I have a special guest on with me, author James Stordahl, and he is the author of the book ScatterBrain, and that involves bipolar, and he is going to tell us a little bit about his background, what he does besides being an author, and talk to us and our veteran listeners about being bipolar, which he is. So welcome, James. I think you're on the line with me.
Okay. Hi, Brad. Thanks for letting me on the bus here.
Sure.
I'm up here in a little bit north of you, in central Iowa, and I'm a Norwegian farm boy from Minnesota, and I took a wrong turn with a job and ended up in Iowa. That's the joke that the relatives all say. You know, you took a wrong turn if you get too close to Iowa. But we've fallen in love with it up here, and this is really cool. Good place to live. It's a quiet, unassuming kind of an environment. And it has worked well for me. Got out of the Minneapolis, St. Paul, hectic traffic and stresses that go with that kind of work or living. And we've enjoyed it down here. So now I've got 7 grandchildren that keep me close at hand. So it would appear that I'm an Iowan for the rest of my life.
Wow.
I started writing after my youngest daughter displayed bipolar tendencies. She had all the acronyms, all the letters: ADD, ADHD, personality disorder. I mean, she had them all. We went to counseling and found out that one of the best things that she could do was to journal and write down her thoughts so that the counselors could deal with it, because there's a lot of thought process, there's a lot of racing thoughts with being bipolar, and you're always, your head, the inside of your head is always active, not as active as your body. You can't possibly keep up with all the racing thoughts. But then I started journaling also, because I attended to her and her needs and drove her to adult daycare and to and from jail and to and from hospitals. And so I adopted journaling about 10 years ago, and that turned into I'm up to about 7 books now. They're short reads, about the 200-page, self-publishing on Amazon. They're create space. They help you get on board and teach you everything, show you everything. And so my first book, Bipolar Dad, was a little choppy and a little limited, and I think that each one gets a little bit more aggressive because I learn how to express myself in writing, and it has helped me a great deal as far as therapy is concerned, and I consider each of my books an ongoing therapy session.
Right. Now, when were you diagnosed with
The
bipolar?
funny thing about being bipolar is that they skirt the issue and they don't come right out and tell you till all of a sudden you've manifested all of the red flags, shown all the red flags. And by the time I did that, I had hidden my affliction very well. I had learned to cope. I self-medicated with alcohol for many years. I believe I was probably drinking to get high by the age of 15, and I couldn't go anywhere or do anything unless I had as we call it up here in the north, we call it a snootful. When you get your cups, you've had enough alcohol. But my dad used to say that when he'd tell his jokes about his drunk brothers and whatever, when they had a snootful. So that goes back to pig farming, when the pigs were eating too fast and they'd get their snoot full of food and then they'd have to snort it out. But that's a pig story, not my story. So the alcohol was a coping mechanism, and I surprised a lot of people, I think, because every time I ran out of ways to cope, then I'd go to a counselor. But with my whole life, it was embarrassing. I mean, to jump the stigma hurdle is something that keeps many, many people still today from expressing themselves freely and really giving an honest diagnosis. So the word bipolar kind of entered my life about 10 years ago, but they said that the more I seek counseling and the more they talk to me and listen to my song and dance, they come out, and in the last 3 to 4 years, my counselors have said, we feel that you have been bipolar since age 15. And because it was so confusing to me, and there were so many thoughts, that I leaned on alcohol to self-medicate, because it was kind of like slowing down a runaway car or a runaway bus. It did help, turn down the volume of the many stations that were playing in my head. And I have been cold sober now for 14 years. And I finally just came to the realization that it was something that I needed to do. And so I went in. My oldest grandson was born here in Des Moines at Mercy Hospital. And my daughter, we went in to see her, and I made a commitment to myself, and then to my wife, and then to the little crying baby I was holding. I made the commitment that the rest of my life, no matter how long it would be done as a sober grandpa, not a drunken grandpa. So
Good for
he
you.
just turned 14 years old, so that's my monitor, that's my benchmark, and Mr. Griffin I have started to remind him in the last couple of years that I hope to be with him for many, many birthdays because he's a significant flag in my life. He reminds me every day when I think of his name or when I see him that I have been sober since he was born.
Yeah, and we have talked, before the interview tonight, and you went on to do many, many things with your life. If you could tell the listeners a little bit about some of the things that you're involved in. You are extremely active, and I know that bipolar disorder holds a lot of people back from doing things that they love to do. And looking at your bio and looking at all the things that you're involved in, you're a little bit older than I am, but you're extremely active, and I think that would be really encouraging for the listeners to hear a little bit about all the things you're involved in, besides writing and speaking on bipolar.
One of the breakthroughs for me again was you have to retrain yourself when you jump the stigma hurdle. It is something that obviously I should have done in my 20s or my 30s or whatever, but I didn't really jump that until I started writing about it, admitting my flaws and some of the colorful past that I've had and actions. I retired from the Postal Service in 2008. So I'm now in my 13th year of retirement. But what that did was it opened up, it's kind of like it opened up all the gates. And I have so many different part-time jobs and activities. I can tell you that this year, 2020 did not bother me at all because I have been a lone wolf. I've been an isolationist. I have been hiding in the basement, whatever. I now have this year, the taxes are just coming out. Okay. I had 13 income sources in the year 2020. I went over 6 figures in 2020. Whether it's writing books or speaking engagements, I got into acting and I answered some calls, and it seems like they're always looking for some wide load with a full head of hair. And me, I weigh 250. I'm 6 feet tall. I weigh 250 plus. And I've had a full head of hair and I had a full beard up until a week ago, but I needed to shave that because I'm going to be in a movie we're going to start shooting in Sunday. The end of 2020, I was in 3 different commercials running at the same time. One was for a casino where I'm all dressed up, makeup and hair done, and I'm with my 3rd fake wife of the year, gambling on the boss's money and having a great time for a regional commercial for Wild Rose Casino, which is one of the 17 casinos here in the state of Iowa. Again, that's a number that surprises me. I had no idea we had 17 casinos. All the old farmers love to gamble. They're making fortunes, by the way. The egg banks and all that kind of stuff, they are making a fortune. There are no broke farmers. That's another story. But anyway, we started with the acting, doing some voiceovers. I was 6 commercials last year. We had the casino commercial. Then I was a delivery guy delivering medicine for Wellmark, Blue Cross Blue Shield. And I finished off the year 2020 in the big red suit and the big white beard. I was Santa on the top of a roof of a quickly built house for a commercial that ran every, I don't know, 15 minutes on 4 different channels throughout the month of December. But it could have been anybody, but it was me. I was Santa. And it was so much fun. And they pay well. I mean, it's not like, we're Hollywood rich, but, $200-300. And again, it's the self-esteem boost, which when you're bipolar, a self-esteem boost is the big adrenaline rush that everybody needs. And in order to get it, people search it out in different ways. Drugs, dangerous behavior, risky behavior, broken marriages, affairs, alcohol, you name it, to get that boost to your psyche, that boost, I found it just by answering an ad and found out that, oh, by the way, I fit right in. So I got this Sunday, I'm going to be what's called a featured extra. I'm going to be on the camera all the time, but I will be a dead person. I will be the victim of a crime on the floor as 10 or 12 people walk around me and investigate. But the director said that I will come back once it's picked up and they start getting the finance. This is going to be the teaser, and they're going to come back, and I'm going to return as the twin brother with a speaking part. So that's kind of fun. And then there's another movie being shot in June in Cedar Rapids, and these are all SAG-AFTRA movies because they're finding that you can't get one done very inexpensively. In fact, they go to Texas, they go to Austin, they go to Houston, but they really like Austin, to shoot Atlanta, Georgia. Hollywood is no longer, they can do it for a third the price if they come to Iowa to shoot the movie. So we're happy to have a couple of writers that graduated from the University of Iowa, and they convinced the moneymakers that why not just shoot in Iowa? We can get the actors for $300 a day, the carpenters, the electricians at regular value. So we're getting a little resurgence of movies here. That's just another aspect that a lot of people may not be looking into. Then I was driving a school bus. I drove a school bus for 9 years, and that pays very well. It pays $21 an hour, and you can work all the hours you want. Plus, you get a 401k, and you get medical, and you get dental, and they're always looking for school bus drivers. And then I started driving a tour bus. So I've been all over the country driving a tour bus because some of the people seem to think that I have a gift of gab and I can really entertain the little old ladies as we roll on down to Branson for a 4-day all expenses paid vacation. And that has turned into a fun part-time job.
Well, that's wow. And I thought I was busy at 57 years old. Do you mind sharing with the listeners how old you are, today?
I am 74 years old, and
wow.
I have been reared, like I say, from the Postal Service from 2008. And it's one of those things where I have a pacemaker. I recommend it to everybody. You start feeling sluggish, go get yourself a pacemaker. You'll start feeling a lot better. and it just perks you up. And since the pacemaker got put in, that has really helped my whole body, top to bottom, get reactivated or rejuvenated. So there's a heart issue that I must bring that in too. So I feel good. I mean, some of my high school classmates we get together, or I see him on Facebook or Twitter or whatever. I said, golly, they're getting old. Those are some old folks. And I had a couple of classmates, female classmates, well, a couple of cheerleaders. They showed up at one of my speaking engagements when I was up in Minnesota 2 years ago. And they came in and said, we can't believe, well, what are you doing? How can you, whatever. And I said, well, I've had a lot of dermatology surgery. I've had skin cancer. I probably have 20 operations on my face. It's kind of like insurance paid plastic surgery. And but thank you very much, girls. I really appreciate the fact that you think I'm looking youthful. I don't know if they were just BSing me or not.
Well, that's something else. We're fixing to go to our sponsor break, and so we're going to do that. And then when we come back, I want to cover two main areas. I want to have you talk about the book ScatterBrain and how that book came to be, and maybe some of the other books that you've written as well. But I wanted to focus in on ScatterBrain, and I want to revisit the correlation between racing thoughts and staying active and doing multiple things in your life that you love and enjoy, which, as yourself being one with bipolar disorder, it seems that is the way that you are dealing with being bipolar, and controlling those racing thoughts. So that's how I'm hearing it, and that's how I'm understanding it. So we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll kind of delve into the multiple career paths and the multiple things that you're doing. And would like to hear more about the book ScatterBrain and some of the other books that you've written as well. So stay with me, James, and we're going to take a sponsor break, and we'll be right back shortly. Welcome our new sponsor, Scars and Stripes Coffee Company. They empower veterans to build their own business using their e-commerce platform. When you purchase from Scars and Stripes Coffee, you are buying from a veteran, and your purchase directly impacts the men and women who have served our country. Do more than say, thank you for your service. Order today and empower a veteran. Use vet code Brad Richard at scarsandstripescoffee.com. That's scarsandstripescoffee.com. Have you heard about Anchor? It's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. First of all, it's free. They have great creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, and it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many, many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you'll need to make a podcast in one place. Check them out and download the free Anchor app, or go to anchor.fm to get started. That's anchor.fm to get started. Welcome back, everyone, to Men on a Mission podcast. I'm your host, Brad Richard, and we have been speaking with author James Stordahl. He is the author of the book ScatterBrain, and he is also has a bipolar disorder and has written several books on being bipolar. So welcome back, James. The first segment was filled with some pretty incredible information. And like I said before we went to break, tell me and the listeners a little bit about the book ScatterBrain, how that book actually was manifested and came into reality.
Okay, thanks, Brad. It's an interesting way to look at life if you spend it in bed or in the basement or not functioning at all because you have so many thoughts and you don't know which one to react to. I mean, I did not know that I had racing thoughts. I just thought I was full of ideas. And when I was in school back in the 60s, I could get so lost looking out the window at a nice cloud formation or a couple of birds attacking each other or whatever. I'd get so lost that the teacher could come right over to me and talk to me, and then I had no idea what in or what was going on, and then of course that would open up the embarrassment and the ridicule of the classmates because they'd giggle and laugh because old space cadet Jim was staring off into space, and he had, I couldn't tell anybody that I had so many thoughts. And I just couldn't take time to focus on what the stupid teacher was trying to tell me. And so that got me into trouble because the teacher's just trying to do their job, and I'm just trying to swim through a sea of 10 ideas in a class, maybe more. Sometimes they would hang around for 5 minutes. Sometimes they would just zip by, kind of like going to a slideshow that was out of control. It would just click up different ideas, and that would show in a number of different ways. I mean, I'm talking about horseback riding, flying an airplane, everything to do with sex. I mean, I was 14, 15 years old, developing like all 14, 15-year-old boys. I mean, you got girls on your mind, and then you've got sports, and then you've got embarrassing, all the stuff. It all manifested itself in much larger formations. I mean, like when us boys first started going to the locker room with the rest of the boys, I mean, sometimes it's embarrassing all of a sudden you're running around naked, and you don't really care for running around naked, but you know how to yourself. So then, same old story. When I was in class, one of the girls that we're all alphabetical, so one of the girls sat in front of me, and her name is Barb. I won't give her last name. I knew her husband real well too. He was a roommate of mine up in Minneapolis for a while before he went back home to marry her. And so she just turned around, and some of the songs I would sing or the thoughts I'd come up with just drove her kind of nuts. And she said, "You are a scatterbrain." And that stuck with me from age 15, being labeled a scatterbrain from one of my attractive female classmates. It stuck with me. And she was at the St. James Library over at, that was in Watonwan County in southern Minnesota. I had about 35 people in the audience. That's kind of like what you get when you're talking mental health, because you have to jump over a stigma hurdle just to admit that you want to hear about mental health stories. At 35, I considered to be a good audience. And she was in there, and I recognized her, even though it had been many, many years. And I said that to her, and she did not remember, but I remembered the day and the reason she turned around and was mad and called me the scatterbrain. And that's how I labeled one of my books. I mean, it's like my books are a kind of explosion of thoughts. You can't really call them memoirs because they are so, I kind of call them radical, but it's kind of like I go in thought spurts, and just try that when you're at a keyboard and you're doing this and you're doing that. I got it from It's from my first book, Bipolar Dead. And this psychiatrist and the author of The Bipolar Child, he detailed the symptoms of bipolar disorder. His name is Dimitri Papoulas, psychiatrist. And I'll just run through this fairly quick. Abrupt, rapid cycling of mood throughout the day. Goofy and giddy gives way to angry and aggressive. I mean, there's my high school right there. Abrupt, rapid cycling of mood throughout the day. High, low, manic, depressive, goofy, giddy, angry, aggressive. That was me through high school. I barely graduated. Racing thoughts. I'm talking about a lot of thoughts, just not a few confusing things like, what stepping down from a curb or sitting in the same pew at church or whatever. I'm talking many, many thoughts. Periods of unusually elevated self-confidence, possible with delusions of grandeur. Well, elated self-confidence that may speak to a lot of people, but I was arrogant. I was cocky. I mean, I was mouthy. Delusions of grandeur? Yeah, I thought I could see through walls. I thought I could fly. I thought I was someone else. When I heard a great singer on the radio, I thought I was doing the singing. I thought that was all so natural. It wasn't. Sleep disturbances, difficulty getting up in the morning, teeth grinding. Oh, my mother, in order to get me up, she had a broom. She was in the kitchen, and our bedroom was right, my brother and I, our bedroom was right above the kitchen. She'd pound on the ceiling because the 2 or 3 alarms wouldn't do it. She'd be pounding on the ceiling with the broom handle to get me up in the morning, and she'd knock the plaster off of the ceiling. She'd be pounding on there so much. She used to get a big laugh out of that, but I said, there's another disturbance in my life that I never addressed or dealt with. Significant episodes of aggression in response to perceived threats. Oh, perceived threats? Hello. Is that your dad talking to you? Is that my dad talking to you? Significant episodes of aggression in response to perceived thoughts. Well, have you ever quit a job because you don't like the jerk you're working with? Or maybe you don't like your boss? How many jobs have you had? I've had 68. Since my very first job, a bag of groceries at Hale Super Value in Madelia, Minnesota, I've had 68 jobs. I've had 10 just in the last couple of years, but they've all been making money. But I mean, it's kind of like being on a merry-go-round. You just never know when the brass ring's going to stop by. Fears of separation and abandonment. Perceiving even the most benign of stimuli as threatening, even in familiar surroundings. Fears of separation and abandonment. I mean, it took me forever and a day to accept a high-paying job with lots of promise, just moving 250 miles from Minneapolis down to Des Moines. Took me a long, long time to accept the job. I'm glad they hung in here because my 4 daughters have all met their husbands, and we love living in Iowa. Difficulty in making transitions and handling disappointment and criticism. Difficulty in making transitions and handling disappointment and criticism. Here's the one that kind of makes people shy away. Unusual display of sexuality. Have you gone through periods of your life where one girlfriend is not enough, maybe 2, maybe 3? Other signs include poor frustration tolerance and frequent complaints of boredom. That is from Dimitri Papoulas, psychiatrist and author of The Bipolar Child. detailing the symptoms of bipolar disorder. Now that is kind of one of the things, the line of thought that roams through all my books. ScatterBrain was dedicated to my classmate Barb, but all of my books have a ScatterBrain quality to it. When I started selling my books and giving them away to members of the bus barn, the school bus drivers here in Ankeny, Iowa, we have about 110 bus drivers in Ankeny. We're a 70,000 population north of Des Moines. And they all came back to me with the same thing. They said, gosh, you bounce around a little bit, don't you, Jim? I said, yeah, you ought to try it from my side. You're right, I do bounce around quite a bit. My most recent book, I gave it the title, Send My Mail to the End of the Trail, which is a song written by the Sons of the San Joaquin, a country western group that I was listening to as I wrote 2 other books. I have one out that's been asked for, and I've been both selling it and handing it out, and it's the KMA syndrome. And the KMA syndrome is one of the it's a story about, for me, the disintegration of our moral fiber that started long ago. It was small and hidden in the backs of minds. It was the quiet reactions to a variety of stimulation. We baby boomers, I mean, I'm a first-year baby boomer, were mostly value programmed by the greatest generation. You could say some things in public, and others needed to be kept in private. Now we are a jumbled mess of everyone wants to get in their 2 cents worth. Now the last 4 years, and I don't want to get too political here, don't want to turn off anybody because I'm just here to tell a story. There's a song that was sang at the White House for the past 4 years that appealed to the growing population that had stopped waiting to be heard. The part of the population so very tired of being left out. I call it the woe is me crowd. The where's my piece of the pie people. The ones that no longer want to wait to be treated like they thought they should be treated. I think the I do not care society has been spawned by the hell no, we won't go protesters of the 60s. They've grown into the mess we have today. If you don't like what you're being told, the likely response today is to tell your foe, kiss my ass, or KMA for short. We will miss. We will never be the same. That's a little story about the KMA syndrome. There's also a lighter one called Bus Biz. My 9 years of driving a school bus, my views of the disintegration of discipline. It can sometimes be funny, it can sometimes be maddening. It got me because I didn't quit. I just retired from school bus driving last year. And my most recent job, I was a office services supervisor with the Census this past year.
Yeah, that gave you a whole other perspective.
Unbelievable. When you talk to people, I was on the Census 10 years ago. In the Census this year, people are so apprehensive about who's going to call you on the phone, or why do you want that information? What are you going to do with that information? And they're rude. And 10 years ago, they weren't that rude. So we're switching into a environment that doesn't get along. And to me, it kind of explains why we are as disgruntled. That's it. I got to take a breath now.
No, that's okay. I agree. Disgruntled people, angry people, this podcast, I started it for my brothers and sisters in the military. I do believe that they have seeds of greatness within them. They have life lessons and skill sets to become leaders and to become independent thinkers and strong people. I think society as a whole, we need those pillars of strength. We need men and women that we can trust. The people that do what they say they will do, and they will follow through on their promises. And my experience in the military, and then the people that I served with, I miss them. I miss the camaraderie and the underlying team aspect to the military. And I know that a lot of my veterans friends out there are, I mean, they're struggling. I know a lot of them are struggling with bipolar disorder, along with PTSD and things of that nature. And that's the purpose of the podcast. Your story is inspirational. It is in line with why I do this podcast. I know that you are a veteran yourself of 22 years, 11 in the Army and 11 in the Navy. Did I get that right?
Yeah, now everybody's going to be shaking their head. What? 11? Yeah. What? Couldn't he make up his mind? Yeah, no, I could not make up my mind.
Why not? You could have split it up 3 ways. 7 Air Force, 7 Navy, 7 in the Army. That'd have been 21 years.
I've got an Air Force story for you.
Oh, we may have to get that off air. We're coming up here towards the very end of the episode. And I want to finish with, if you could give your personal advice on dealing with bipolar disorder or PTSD or any mental health issue that family members are aware of that listen to the podcast, or men and women in the military that listen to the Men on a Mission podcast, what would be 3 things that they can do to move forward in their lives and help themselves to become better and stronger people?
That is the real root of the garden, so to speak. You have to recognize first. I recognized but didn't share. Once you recognize, either in yourself or a family member or loved one recognizes the continuation of erratic actions, that it wasn't just, you didn't just hit your thumb with a hammer. This is something that controls. I mean, 68 jobs, I mean, anomaly, okay? If you've gone through a dozen jobs and you can't get along with your boss, you've got issues. And you have to recognize it. You have to talk about it. You have to jump that stigma hurdle and seek help. That's one of the problems that we have had over the years. First, getting over that stigma hurdle, but now it's like everybody's in a rush. There are many different avenues for help, for assistance. Talking about it is the best way to do it. Writing about it, number 2, write about it. And like this podcast, I mean, Brad, you're doing a great service to all of those in and out of the service by bringing this out. You're talking about it. You're bringing it to the forefront, and you can't hide it. You can't drown it with alcohol. You can't numb it forever because it is in your head, and you have to move along because there are ways to get help. Phone calls, visits, but talking about it and writing about it.
Excellent advice. And with that, James, I want to thank you for being on the Men on a Mission podcast. So much information. I know we could go longer. My voice probably wouldn't last too much longer. I got those bad East Texas allergies, but I want to thank you for being on the podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, we have been speaking with James Stordahl. He is a multi-time author. He does have bipolar disorder, and he has a very, very active lifestyle and has so many great insights and tips on mental health issues and bipolar disorder specifically. So I want to thank you, Jim, for being on the podcast. Your contact information, the book ScatterBrain will have links in the show notes where you can connect with James. I'm sure he'd be glad to hear from you, and I would encourage you to definitely do that. Check out his book. Get all of his books on Amazon. They're all terrific. And I once again thank you for being on the podcast. It's been a pleasure, and we will talk again, I'm sure.
Thanks a lot, Brad.
You're very welcome. And want to thank everyone for joining us tonight on the Men on a Mission podcast. Make sure you listen to the very end so you can sing along with your branch song. And I'll end the way I always end. Take care of yourself. Take care of your little me, and love that little person. So until next time, bye for now.
First to fight for the right and to build the nation's might, and the army goes rolling along. Proud of all we have done, fighting till the battle's won, and the army goes rolling along. And it's high, high, hey, the army's on its way. Count off and Kate is loud and strong. For wherever we go, you will always know that the army goes rolling along. From the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli, we fight our country's battles in the air, on land and sea. First to fight for right and freedom, and to keep our honor clean. We are proud to claim the